Arc fault, face off. Player 1, select your weapon. Fuse box. Siemens. Hager. Hager selected. Player 2 has entered the game. Player 2, select your weapon. Verso. Hager. Hager selected. Hager versus Hager. Fight!
Yes, in what has worked out to be another stupendously long presentation, I'll be finding out whether Hager's original AFDD can seemingly kick the backside of their new, supposedly smarter model. You might want to check the chapters to this video if you just want to cut to the chase, but if you've the time, I've all sorts of interesting stuff to show and tell on the whole sorry saga of Hager and their apparent misstep into the domestic AFDD market. First though, as I will be addressing two models of Hager arc fault detection device in this video, we perhaps need suitable nomenclature to differentiate between them. I guess I could refer to their original model as Hager's Fat Boy, but what about this thing? You know, I think what we need here is a nonce.
Listen, we know you're here to see an 11-year-old girl.
She said she was 12!
No, not that kind of nonce. I'm referring to the adjective. The dictionary definition being a nonce word or expression is one that is invented for one particular occasion. Well, on this particular occasion, and for this video only, I could perhaps describe Hager's new AFDD model as wank, which is admittedly similar in sound to another word commonly used by many of us, but is spelled differently, and it's a nonce specifically intended for this product in this presentation. But yeah, going head to head later will be Hager's Fat Boy AFDD against Hager's wank new model. It seems there are a number of questions people want answered following my videos last autumn where I set out to show Hager's shiny new wares, only to end up rubbishing the product for its huge headroom, lack of backward compatibility, overcomplication of operation, muddy marketing claims, and perhaps most importantly, the fact I couldn't get 3 examples of the cocking thing to actually act when a serious fault was shoved up their wazoo. My original video taking a first look at Hager's wank AFDD was back in September of last year, but it was at the arse end of October when I really put the boot in. That was over 3 months ago, plenty of time then for them to react one way or another, and let's not pretend this channel is too insignificant for them to notice. Hager have a very active social media team, and I know they've seen everything I had to say. I sidled up to their stand at a CEF Tech Talk on the 29th of November, where I once again met Henry, who we saw in my original video, and this time also Tracy, who knew exactly who I was and what I'd been saying. Yet we're both perfectly polite and civil, even though I suspected they wanted to slap me around the legs with bunches of stinging nettles out in the car park. They didn't tell me much, aside from I was the only person reporting negative news on their product, and it was just fine for everyone else. Okay then. Well, here's the thing. You don't have to put too much effort into poking around on social media, electrical forums, or speaking in person to other sparks to find there's a lot of unease about this product. Does it actually work? Can it be trusted to provide years of robust service, and how much support might we lowly installers have to provide once it's sat in a CU out on a customer site? I suspect such concerns are twofold, partly because this is an AFDD, and we who are tasked with installing and fault finding on such are limited to what we can do in the event of a trip with today's test instruments, making them something of an unknown quantity in our day jobs. But I imagine people are also nervous because this is one of the first mainstream intelligent upgradable devices designed for plopping into consumer units, and many are weary of the whole smart tech debacle where much is promised, much fails to deliver, and much is quickly obsoleted. We installers need reassurance of not being bitten on the arse, not getting whacked around the head continuously with marketing spiel about game changing. It's not a fucking game. This is our livelihoods, and any doubts the likes of me have about the efficacy of the product and support burden it might land upon us need more than mere shoulder shrugging from Hager's sales staff, who seem to assume I'm a lone-voiced dickhead who foolishly lacks the blind faith Hager figure I ought to have. Perhaps the question I've been most asked about all this: did Hager have anything to say? I mean, I predicted they wouldn't, and they would simply want my moaning to be quietly brushed under the nearest carpet, but maybe they'd have a wizard technical reason they could deliver with accompanying mic drop to explain why I was unable to get their sophisticated arc fault detector to react to an arc, when other manufacturers' models all seemingly did the business. As predicted, Hager have kept their heads in the sand. I'm told people have asked them about it at exhibitions and the like, and their official line is simply some mumbling about my testing not being real world, which, you know, maybe it ain't. Nonetheless, when you see other makes and models clicking off on spotting an arc, while Hager's supposedly superior wank dumbly sits on the DIN rail with its thumb up its arse, it doesn't inspire confidence. But even if Hager didn't want to acknowledge my testing, surely the other points I made in my prior presentations were valid, such as why are they flogging it on backwards compatibility when it explicitly lacks such, and why was there no firmware changelog so we installers can see what version is current and what any update address is. Have they even corrected the spelling mistakes in their technical documentation, and have they dropped the frankly embarrassing number of times they idiotically parrot the term game-changing? Well, it's the ass end of January 2024 at the time of recording, so let's see what's been tweaked on Hager's product page since last October. On the subject of backwards compatibility, it seems this statement is still here. Upgrade any existing Hager installation with minimal cost and disruption. Part of our promise as Hager is to try and make all products retrofittable, which means low cost and lifetime ownership of any installation of our products. Yet we still have the same downloadable compatibility flowchart, still with the word compatibility misspelled in its file name, and still stating their wank AFDD is not compatible with insulated consumer units. I previously berated Hager for only having compatibility with consumer units from 2016, when 17th edition Amendment 3 mandated the use of steel enclosures, and although their wank AFDD is not for insulated enclosures, I assumed Hager were flying the backward compatibility flag in case you wanted to fit them into old metal TPN boards. But I was wrong. When you look at the product guidance notes downloadable from their technical support, and still with guidance spelled wrong in its file name, it clearly states the wank FDDs are for the Design 10, Design 30 or Design 50 consumer units only. You shouldn't be using this product if your DB is not one of these three boards, whose heritage is very short-lived. In fact, Hager call them 18th edition boards in their guidance notes, so I'm not even sure if these models came about in 2016 with 17th edition Amendment 3, or if they're models post-dating July 2018 when 18th edition landed. Either way, backwards compatible, their AFDDs are demonstrably not. The Design 10, 30 and 50 are current model ranges available to buy on the market today, and Hager's own documentation specifically precludes their wank going into anything predating these present ranges. Hilariously, it's not even compatible with the very enclosure their sales demo model has it installed into, despite backwards compatibility being written on the stand right next to the fucking thing. Yet Hager are still pushing this as a sales point on their website, and only go to the trouble of telling you any different if you go to the trouble of downloading misspelled PDFs. 100% backward compatibility is only truly achievable in the best case scenario of the board being a relatively new Design 10, 30 or 50 in an RCBO configuration and a surface mounted profile. For every other situation, you're either downrating it, installing an upgrade kit, or walking away from the job because the manufacturer says it can't happen. What Hager's bluster about backward compatibility basically boils down to is, you can fit our new consumer unit products into some of our current consumer units. Well done, folks. Although I somehow don't think that's entirely exclusive to Hager as boasted on their website, because, newsflash motherfuckers, all other manufacturers have on the market consumer unit products that fit into their current ranges of consumer units too. I know! Who knew? In fact, some of them might also make consumer units whose front cover fits on, something Hager have always had trouble with in my experience. I mean, Gordon Bennett, this is all such outright nonsense, I'm awarding it my bollocks stamp of disapproval. Exclusive to Hager? Indeed. Another thing I asked for in October was a firmware changelog. If I buy and install these things, I can make a note of what firmware they're on, but if an update is released, I need a heads up when that happens and what any update address is, so I can decide which installations may need revisiting to apply the change. An update that only addresses a nuisance trip with certain EV chargers doesn't need to be applied to a top floor flat. An update that corrects a critical flaw found after sale might need to be applied to all past installations. This is easy for Hager to implement on their website, or at least I assume they have the technical nous for it, but maybe I'm giving them too much credit, because here we are into 2024 and still listed in the FAQ is this line which reads, "When there is a new firmware update, will installers be notified of the update?" with a response of, "When a test inspection is carried out on an installation, if installers connect to the device, the app will let the user know if an update is available." Well, fucking cheers. It seems Hager are confused as to what a FAQ is. If the frequently asked question is, as an installer, will I be informed of any updates? Then the answer should be more than something that reads as, "Get knotted, you'll have to go figure it out for yourself." That's more of a "fuck off" than the question being answered in the way people like me would like to see. And let's not forget, it's people like me who make the design decisions on whose hardware is procured and installed on any given job. So please, pretty please, give me a fucking changelog. Looking at it, I don't think anything is altered on this website at all. Misleading compatibility claims, no firmware changelog, infuriating terms knocked up by the spotty GCSE kid who happened to be on work experience in marketing that week, and the same stupid case study where Hager's bods installed their wank product into their marketing man's own home while they played the "let's pretend we're real installers out in the real world" game. This is their primary public-facing page on AFDDs. And it's all largely bollocks. Speaking of that fucking awful case study, you may recall Hager were blowing their own pink oboe despite their super wank AFDD spuriously tripping off under non-fault conditions whenever their marketing man used his granny charger. They somehow tried to peddle this as a plus point by saying their boffins were able to use a tracebox to capture the signature arc causing the upset before applying an update to prevent it from happening again. Indeed, under the "Changing the Game" heading on that case studies page, their top marketing furor goes on to say, "From an end customer perspective, it was really reassuring to see how quickly we can react to resolve unwanted tripping for our installers and their customers. I strongly believe that, as a company, we are really changing the game with this device." I was trying to come off a little Sean Connery there, but I'm not sure it worked. Anyway, another PDF on their website documents how this process is supposed to work, and we can clearly see that in instances where installers and maintainers figure it's not a fixed wiring issue, we're supposed to fall back onto Hager's tech support, who will either recognise it as a known problem they can advise us on, or they will be able to provide a trace box, analyse the captured data, and issue an enhanced algorithm for the benefit of us all. I questioned how hands-on Hager would really be with their trace boxes when it came to us no-name proles out in the world, suffering from the likes of granny chargers and washing machines erroneously tripping off AFDDs under non-fault conditions. When it comes to getting hands-on hardware, it seems that's not impossible. Here's the Insta account of Byrne Electrical, who did get a trace box from Hager when rogue trip events were occurring and who posted pictures of it online. I've done some sleuthing, including reverse image searches, and I've concluded that this is a proprietary Hager widget, something they've knocked up in-house. I don't know how many they've got, but it's obviously not something anyone like me is going to get their hands on from some shonky Chinese seller on Amazon. What we appear to have here is a black box recorder of some kind that connects to the AFDD via Bluetooth and captures data Hager's boffins can then analyse once the trace box is physically returned to them. While that all sounds proactive, certainly Byrne Electrical thought so with the positive prose penned in this post. However, there are three things that bug me about this. Firstly, I thought the point of their much-touted Pro Tools mobile app was to get data from the AFDD, yet it seems the AFDD is gathering more data than it's prepared to pass on to the app, data that it's happy to give only to the trace box to allow Hager's engineers to delve deeper into what's happening. If this is the case, exactly what additional data that we proles are not permitted to see is the AFDD collating, and why did Hager design it like this? Surely it would have been better to have the ability for it to zap everything over to the Pro Tools app so the installer can simply forward that information to Hager without the need to install a wholly separate and proprietary device. My hunch is that the Tracebox has more storage than the AFDD and that it performs long-term real-time monitoring that your phone can't capture without you leaving it on site. Nonetheless, it would seem to me that if a company is designing a product that can capture and log data, their end product really should have the capacity for doing that without needing a wholly separate accessory. I truly find this tracebox thing baffling when Hager are bleating on about the sophistication of their ARC fault detector and its Pro Tools companion. Secondly, this turns we installers into an unpaid extension of Hager's R&D and tech support. What's in it for us if we install Hager's AFDDs for our customers, if our customers are then inconvenienced by trip events under normal non-fault conditions, and we're tasked by Hager into returning to site to install additional hardware capable of recording what the AFDD is telling it, a task the supposedly super fucking AFDD with Pro Tools app apparently cannot do independently. Thirdly, it all sounds very time consuming. If I experience an intermittent ARC trip, which I believe through inspection and testing isn't down to a bona fide series or parallel event, and that I suspect or know to be erroneous, such as Hager's marketing man finding it tripping every time he unplugged his electric jalopy, then I guess I have to contact Hager's support bods, have them post me out a trace box, install it out on site, recreate the trip event or wait for it to occur naturally, then remove it, send it back and await feedback on what the trace box tells the boffins and what advice or updates they can offer. If a separate accessory is needed, why didn't they at least design something on a plug top rather than a widget that has to be hardwired onto the DIN rail? How much time do Hager think we have to be wasting it out on site trying to resolve problems of their making? Once they get the data, maybe their engineers will do what their website promises and say, ah yes, it happens every time this particular model of dishwasher is used. We've seen a lot of this and will issue an update so our devices aren't fooled, unlike our competitors whose AFDDs are not upgradable. Well, great, hand jobs all round, and that was certainly the spiel we got at Wylex last year.
So with AFDDs, one of the main issues in history has been with them nuisance tripping because of a new range of appliances, let's say, that gets launched into the market. So if we come across anything like that, we can update the firmware on the device to take those into account, and then from the app you just update the firmware on the device.
Let's not prevaricate around the bush. We know from Instagram that Ricky at Byrne Electrical has used the trace box, and some time ago too, this Insta post being 35 weeks old at the time of writing, so this was back last spring. It looks like he put in enough time and study to find it was a particular program on the washing machine that was causing his headaches. So what was his experience with the Hager trace box, and how did it all get resolved? Well, let's stop fucking around and get it from the horse's mouth. I'm privileged to be joined by none other than Ricky Byrne himself, who is appearing on my big screen and coming in my ears. So nice to have you here, Ricky. Tell us about the nature of the install. Were these AFDDs you put in, were they on your property or in a customer site?
Yes, obviously when we found out about the Hager AFDDs back in 22, I think it was, we put our name down with a wholesaler to order a pair. And the reason for ordering them, I wanted to fit them at my property so that I could get first-hand experience of them before, you know, I wouldn't sell something to a customer that I'd not use myself, and obviously to get a better understanding of them. Then around about March last year, we started getting more regular tripping. It happened once or twice over a weekend, and I had problems with the washing machine. And it turned out the actual door lock on our Nindersit washing machine, the actual door lock, it turned out, and I opened it all up, it actually melted. And so that was the first time the AFDD from Hager detected something and seemed to have done its job.
Yeah, that sounds great, because that sounds like it's actually picked up a bona fide appliance fault, something where there was a heat effect, and it has actually. So it's great to hear that it's actually worked, because with AFDDs, all bets are off as to whether it's going to pick up a fault within an appliance. Obviously, on the distribution wiring, the flex to the appliance, but what happens within the appliance once you're past any isolation transformers and that sort of stuff is kind of, well, in the long grass it might or might not work. So it sounds like it's actually done something positive for you there.
Yeah, it did. So obviously the washing machine in question was kaput. We ordered a new one from Hotpoint, and obviously the wife used various different modes. I found myself using the 45-minute mode, and when we were 7 or 8 minutes into the 45-minute cycle, the AFDD would trip and would indicate a series arc fault. So obviously we just reset the breaker each time, or the AFDD each time, and the washing machine just continues from where it left off and doesn't usually trip again during that cycle.
But this was a kind of a repeatable fault from cold, though, I suppose. It was repeatable. Yeah. It happened every time from cold, and then the cycle continued once it was reset.
I mean, it's an intermittent fault. It only tends to do it on the 45-minute cycle. We did find that when it was on the 90-degree, 60-minute white cycle, it done it once on that, because obviously I involved my wife in sort of the data logging of when it was to trip. But 9 times out of 10, it was the 45-minute cycle, 37 minutes remaining on the timer, and that's when it tended to trip. Now, Hager stepped in, they sent us the trace box, and obviously part of their spec was that we wired it into a different circuit so that it had a continuous supply in the event of an arc fault, or, you know, when it was to do its recording. So I connected it to the smoke alarm circuit, which is the last one on the DIN rail, basically, and kept it energized. Now, within maybe a month of having it, we recorded several traces, but it hadn't actually captured the data. And then it managed to catch one before I went to the Isle of Man for the TT. And then after it had caught that first log, the thing basically stopped working. I couldn't get it to repair. I couldn't get it to reconnect to the AFDD. So along came a second one. Same again, we wired it up to the smoke alarm circuit, and it worked, and it recorded two more traces. They wanted 3 traces to send back to France for diagnostics. We got 2 more traces, and I managed to record a 4th. I sent that data off back in October. Now, the arc faults were sort of few and far between. They seemed to have thinned out, and my mindset was maybe the brushes or whatever the motor or washing machine does at 37 minutes into its cycle has maybe cleaned itself up. Maybe the faces on the brushes have sort of curved around the armature as opposed to being square, where you'd probably get more arcing anyway. But then obviously we removed it, we returned it to Hager, and it's been radio silence. I've sent them a couple of emails. I've called into the tech department. I've not had any responses.
So how long did you have the box on site for?
From the top of my head, I think they sent the box April, May time last year. And obviously we started recording, I'm going to say maybe to October time last year.
All right, so you had it for a significant period of time then. And you sent it back around October time, I take it then, and they've not fed back to you since?
Not come back to me. I'm still having intermittent tripping again with the washing machine. Obviously, we've checked all our terminals, you know, the plug socket behind the washing machine, the grid plate where obviously they're isolated down to. Everything's, you know, as it should be, as you'd expect. And, you know, the AFDD is detecting the washing machine to be the issue.
You've been doing effectively field research for them, haven't you? Because you've been recording these things and you've sent them off and they haven't got back to you. So you want to know, I suppose, is there a bona fide fault with this appliance than the AFDD is correctly reacting to, like your last appliance where there was a fault that caused thermal damage? Or is this an erroneous trip, some rogue arc signature that perhaps they ought to be issuing an update for to remove it from happening again? Because I've noticed on your Instagram page there are others who have commented with saying that they've also seen problems with things like EV chargers and washing machines. And we know that Hager themselves, their marketing man, had a nuisance trip with his EV charger. So there's obviously some appliances that the Hagers are picking up on, which I'm not necessarily seeing on other brands. I mean, I fitted AFDDs in my installation, Wylex ones in 2020, and my washing machine and EV charger haven't caused zip. It's one of those things, isn't it, where you kind of want to know, is this a valid trip event? Is there some problem here I need to be getting on top of or not? And you've gone to the time and effort of gathering that data for Hager, and you say they haven't gone back to you, and you've chased them quite a few times, I take it.
Yeah, it's bizarre, really, because I feel like I've got a good relationship with Hager. I know a number of the staff there, but I've sent the reports in. You know, I've done all this for their research and obviously to try and find out what's causing it. And the fact that it's still happening and I don't have a resolution. I mean, admittedly, I've also reached out to Hotpoint, and they basically said, "Oh, we need to send an engineer out to inspect it." And I said, "Well, they're only going to do what I've already done." I tried explaining to the situation and that it's fitted to an AFDD, and they just didn't seem interested.
I suspect a Hotpoint engineer will just part swap the shit out of it and not really do any kind of testing or look into anything like that at all. They probably won't even know what an AFDD is. It would just be some mechanical bloke who's expecting to change the motor or the door seal or something like that, I imagine. But I mean, you say you've got a good relationship with Hager and you were very positive in your praise initially. How do you feel though now? Because have you lost a bit of confidence? Because it's fortunate in a way that it's on your own home and you put these things into to gain your own experience of these things, as I did with mine. I wanted to know, how do these things react to not a brand new installation, but an existing installation, something where if I put them in for somebody else, what are the pitfalls? What's going to cause me any trouble? Has it dented your confidence in AFDDs or in Hager at all?
Well, I mean, we've changed our terms and conditions specifically around the AFDD stuff, because whilst when they came out and they were sold out to us as being the best thing for to prevent fires, straight away, it's a great thing for a contractor like myself to advertise that and sell and upsell a job. But
yeah,
I'm glad that I fitted them to my own property, because I thought, imagine if I fitted these to 10 houses and every week I get a phone call saying, oh, something's tripped out, and I have to then go and fault find it. It's not like an RCD fault find. A series arc is few and far between. We have no diagnostic equipment within reach to be able to test that sort of equipment or even find that fault. So now, I mean, I will only fit AFDDs if a customer specifically asks for them, and it's down to their discretion, well, my discretion, and that their understanding is that if they start having issues with tripping, I kind of have to wash my hands of it. I mean, I'm more than happy to come to your property, but you need to pay for our time, because if you've got a faulty appliance, ultimately it won't be our problem. It'll be the appliance or the setup. So, I mean, I definitely got lost confidence in AFDDs in general. I mean, there's been all sorts of stories flying around with other manufacturers, but I mean, the Hager stuff, I mean, nothing too Hager. I use their products on a day-to-day basis, but I won't be recommending any AFDDs at the minute until we get some solutions, because I can't afford to spend that time fault diagnosing problems that might not necessarily even be a series arc. It might, like you say, be an erroneous arc fault that's being generated and detected, and we could literally be going down a yellow brick road to nowhere.
All right, well, super stuff. Thank you for your time tonight, and chin.
Cheers, Dave. I'm going to have a beer. Mine are downstairs in the fridge.
Jolly good show. Remember this quote from Hager's marketing man and the flow diagram we saw earlier? From an end customer perspective, it was really reassuring to see how quickly we can react and resolve unwanted tripping for our installers and their customers. What does it sound to you like Hager are on the fucking ball here? I know Rick is not the only person to have had problems with Hager's wank device tripping when perhaps it shouldn't, nor is he the only one to have used a trace box and sent it back to Hager with captured data. So we'll see later in this video how many firmware updates have been issued to correct erroneous tripping since last summer when version 1.5.1 was current. Actually, spoiler alert, I'll tell you now, it's none. Zero. Zippity fuck all. We're still on version 1.5.1. So the statement about Hager giving a flying fuck at a rolling donut when it comes to solving our on-site headaches also gets my bollocks stamped across it. And why are Hager's smart AFDDs tripping for people when they go about using their EV chargers and washing machines? I've had Wylex AFDDs installed in my home since 2020, and do you know how many times these cocksuckers have tripped when I've juiced up my EV or washed the gravy stains from out of my underpants? Not once, and yet I can demo the ability of these models to operate on an arc fault with ease using my homemade tester, so I know they work. The fact Hager's marketing is based around a flawed case study is utter ridiculum. Looking for more interesting case studies? Jesus T. Christ, yes please. I mean, last one was fucking gash. None of these marketing fanny bangs seem to be about AFDDs. Oh, I stand corrected, here's one, and local to me too, Warwick University. I used to work there and I hated every damn minute of it. Anyway, it seems this is an older case study from summer 2020, and look, they're installing Hager's Fatboy model. So Hager's only case study on their wank AFDD is again that silly nonsense that wasn't performed by a third party in a real world environment, was put in by their tech team at their marketing man's own home, and it did trip off when it shouldn't have done. Here's something I recently spotted on Shitter, a platform that's largely all but dead to me since that prick Elon Musk took it over. Nonetheless, I was tagged onto this post created by Darryl Barlow, who says, I fitted this Hager consumer unit full of AFDDs this week, and this time I energized the AFDDs before connecting the circuit cables so that I could run the firmware update using the Pilot app. But once again, I was unable to verify if the devices were running the latest firmware. I swapped to using Hager consumer units solely because of the future-proofing offered by the Hager AFDDs, and the first couple of installs were great. I was able to complete the installation and then update the AFDDs. The next time I fitted them, the Hager Pilot app told me I needed to disconnect the circuit cables from the AFDD in order to run the firmware updating facility, and as this was a completed install, this wasn't about to happen. I am considering abandoning the Hager choice if the AFDDs are not actually updatable. Is anyone else having troubles updating Hager AFDDs using the Hager Pilot app? Could Hager please comment? Darryl goes on to say, this is what I got this time. It just stuck at that for a very long time on each AFDD I tried to update, so ended up giving up. He then gets a response from Contact Electrical, who we shall hear more of later, who goes on to say, this is why I won't fit them. I use Hager all the time, but don't fit if I need AFDD. Have you seen the DSES video on YouTube? I can recommend the Luden AFDDs. Fitted a lot and only ever had one issue. Circuit breakers should be fit and forget other than the obvious testing. And then Darryl comes on to say, so I just watched Dave Savory for the very first time. He is quite an entertaining character and comes up with some good points. Very concerning is the arc that's visible to the naked eye and producing such heat, yet the Hager AFDD doesn't trip. I will be following up with Hager. Good to his word, about 10 days later, Darryl was kind enough to post his follow-up. So having had a couple of conversations with Hager and having read some of their AFDD literature, I'm happy that A, the firmware can be updated without disconnecting the final circuit cables, and B, my mobile internet was probably causing the firmware update checking status to apparently hang. It was fast as lightning when I bench tested an AFDD firmware update back at base while on Wi-Fi. Darryl seems to be reassured, but for me it raises yet more red flags. Hager have apparently told him these circuit loads can be left connected while the update process is underway, yet the Pro Tools app requests all loads are removed when there is an update to apply. So which is it? The unconfirmed word I hear from others is that the residual current protection is suspended while an update is underway, which would perhaps explain the need to play it safe with circuit disconnection. Personally, I would say that if the Pro Tools app is telling you in writing to disconnect all loads, then that takes precedence over any verbal advice the tech support bods may have provided over the phone. More importantly, Darryl has been on site attempting to perform a firmware update and it's hung, causing him to give up. Hager have apparently told him that's down to his mobile internet, and it seems things are all fine on Wi-Fi. Well, what do Hager think that most of us will be connected to when we're out on site trying to update the cocking things? The local connection between your mobile phone and their AFDD is via Bluetooth, which tends to have a 10-metre range and is just fine if you're hovering next to the consumer unit. But there will be plenty of occasions where an installer is in someone's basement, unable to get a signal to the wider world, and there won't be any Wi-Fi for them to conveniently connect to. Had the Pro Tools app been designed correctly, it would allow us to download and cache the latest firmware while we slurp a low-foam vanilla soy latte back at the office, so it can later be zapped over to the devices out on site without the need for a connection to the wider internet being required for each device each time an update is attempted. This seems to be another massive failing in the design of the Pro Tools software, and again betrays the total lack of thought Hager have perhaps put into how the troops will be installing and supporting their product. But this is something Hager can fix with a updated version of Pro Tools. I mean, it should have worked that way from the start, but at least they can potentially resolve it. So far as I can see, however, they haven't done anything to address anybody's concerns to date. Take my own findings in the prior videos. What Hager perhaps should have done was send me a trace box so I could capture the arc signatures of my test chamber, which all the other AFDDs are acting on when theirs didn't. Then they could have analysed the result and provided a technical explanation of why their product wasn't falling for my monkey shines and why we shouldn't all lose confidence in it. That would have been a marketing win and would have shut up the detractors. Instead, we have this cloud of doubt that they've done precisely nothing to address. Okay, boys and girls, so let's have a look at what's new in the cave since my last video on this subject back in October. Well, I've had a bit of a rejig of my test rig, a rather funky rejig I think you'll find, because I've now lined up the 4 models of AFDD that I've got to play with. 1, 2, 3, 4, as the Germans would say. So I've got my Siemens dual module unit here, my Verso, fuse box, and of course the Hager sitting at the end there, and these are all individually switchable to the arc chamber. So if I want to prat about with these things. I don't have to pull the cover off and get the screwdrivers out as I did before when I was filming with Linda. Well, let's do a little demonstration of said arrangement, shall we? So if I switch on the Siemens, that is now putting the output of this AFDD to the chamber, and if I give my knob a twiddle, my electric radiator down here is connected to it. A bit of a flash and a bang, and off it pops. Beautiful stuff. If I switch on the Verso, exciting stuff this. The Verso trips off. Jolly good. If I switch on the fuse box, I wonder what's going to happen here. Yeah, beautiful. So I'm getting a bit flashy on there. And finally, of course, excuse me, the Hager, which sits there, a snapping, a crackling, and a popping, but not tripping off. You can actually see that. I was going to get the camera closer into that, but I think you can see the flashing and arcing going on in there. There's a bit of smoke and stuff as well. I don't want it to get too hot in there at the moment, but that's the output of the Hager. No change there then, that's fine. I haven't actually used this since last October. It's the first time I've switched it back on. It'll still be on the same firmware revision as before, so I don't really expect to see it doing anything different to what we last saw. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, David, what happens if you switch all of these on together and try and run the test? Well, that would parallel all the outputs together. It would split the current, split the arc. It just doesn't work very well. So it is possible to physically do that, but yeah. It's not like you can put them all together and have a bit of a face-off, unfortunately. One interesting thing, though, probably not interesting at all. Let's switch off three of them, the Hager, the fuse box, and the Verso. So only the Siemens is on. And now let's switch on all the outputs. And you'll notice that even though the circuitry inside these has been cut off from the buzz bar because their handles are all in the down position, the Verso and the fuse box are showing power. They're being backfed from the output of the Siemens here, but the Hager isn't showing power. It turns out these three, if any of these three are on, well, if any of them are on in fact, these three will power from being backfed from the circuit if the circuit itself is energized while the handle is off, but the Hager is the only one that doesn't do that. So if I were to turn on any of the other three, all three would come on, but the Hager stays dead, which is interesting. Don't know what that means. It obviously means that the Hager is, as we know, a different beast internally. I'm going to fire up the Hager app. I've not fired up this app since October, so I don't know if there's going to be any updates required to the Pro Tools app or anything like that. Hager Pilot. Here we go. Botheration. It's asking me to sign in. I'm going to have to go and look up my credentials. As Big Clive would say, one moment, please. Update available. Okay, I already do have an update. Well, let's run that then. Maybe Hager have done something whizzy. So I've got to reload. Hello, David. You are logged in. Jolly glad to hear it. What do you want to connect? I want to connect my AFDD, but what's all this? You can add your first distance, add a server. I don't know what that is. I was expecting it to just come up with the option to update my AFDD, but I don't know what this gateway business is all about. Let's try add a server. Is it asking for a physical server? It's not very intuitive, this, is it? I don't know. I really don't know what's going on here. I'm going to have to stop recording and try and figure that out. Okay, we're back. I had to delete the app and reinstall it to get that option back. I don't know what was going on there. Let me turn my screen recorder back on. Doesn't bode well, does it? The app update balks the app and you have to reinstall it. But I do now have the option for diagnosing and updating my hardware. So let's go into protection. Okay, yeah, I understand. I understand. Update and AFDD firmware. Okay. Press and hold until we get the blinking blue LED. Yep. Next. Connect. We're on 1.51 and firmware is up to date. Oh, that's disappointing. So there have been no updates. And again, the thing is, I've had to take some time, obviously, this evening to get this app working, get signed in, talk to the fucking device, just to find that there aren't any updates. Now, again, if Hager had a firmware update page, a changelog page, where they said we're currently on 151, you know, it would let me know that there was no point doing all that. So you don't know until you've got to interrogate these things just to get it to force it to try and find out whether there's an update or not. Well, that's a load of shit then, isn't it? It would seem that even months after I last showed this not working, there's still nothing to show. It's now the end of January and there have been no updates. The thing still doesn't fucking work. Let's turn it on. Let's get it arcing. Pretty fucking sustained. And it's doing fuck all. This has been given to me by Ben at Contact Electrical. This is Hager's initial foray into AFDDs. Twice as fat and twice as dumb because there's no intelligence in there. There's nothing, no Bluetooth bullshit to talk to, no logging, nothing like that. This is their commercial version of the ARC fault device. I believe they sold it as. Not really for domestic use because it's a double width unit. Excuse me. Too much smoking. But what I can do in my super new setup is I can take out my double unit Siemens, put this bad boy motherfucker in, and then we can do a face-off between this fucking bastard here and this fucking bastard here. And we'll see if any of the Hager stuff ever behaved. Well, let's do that then. A quick bit of screwdriver twiddling and the fat boy Hager is now sitting in the slot where once the Siemens was. So, okay, let's turn that on. I've already got the switch set so that the Hager is driving the arc chamber. Let's give it a go, shall I? I've taken the front off the arc chamber so you can better see what's going on in there. Oh! How about that? It's got a yellow flag on it. It just tripped. Another thing, somebody said I might have better luck if I wasn't using the brass stop ends but was using carbon instead. So I procured these. Spring-loaded carbon motor brushes for a washing machine motor. Have a little bit of a play with those then, shall we? And we'll see perhaps if putting one of these in place of one of my terminals here has any effect on the Hagers. Okay, sports fans, well, I've replaced my lower terminal with the carbon thingamy-bob. I haven't bothered to mechanically fix it properly into place, so it's just kind of wedged in there at the moment. I'm just hoping that will do just to prove a point. It may not, of course. I mean, if the Hager works better with a carbon terminal, then, you know, I'll incorporate that into my design properly. Power on. Hager on. We'll use the Bluetooth bad boy for this one. Power on. Oh, it's got a bit of smoke there. Not really the arc effect I was after. Let's see if we can just crap out that connection a little bit. Is that? That looks like it's glowing. It's certainly smoking. Come on, Hager. Stop the fire. Shit, this is probably a really bad idea. Whee! Come on, Hager. Put out the fire, you fucker. Fucking hell. It's glowing red in there. Jesus. There's going to be all sorts of health and safety people watching with their hands over their eyes. If my NIC inspector's watching this, then I'm probably in a lot of trouble. But this is science, you know? Is that on fire? I mean, come on, what do you need? The fucking thing's on fire, for Christ's sake. That ain't good. You know what? Jesus. I might let that cool down and then we'll have a bit more of a play with the others on that. We'll try the original Hager on that. See if that has any reaction, because that's pretty impressive. I mean, you can't deny that there's some arcing, some localized thermal events going on there. It's not good, is it? It's not good. Okay. Let's give it a few minutes to cool down. I'm going to go and open a window. Right, let's proceed. You'll have to excuse the sound of the fire alarm in the background. I can't shut the fucking thing off. Here we go. Right, dangerous antics. Not to be tried at home, kids. Fat Boy Hager. Should we start with the Fat Boy Hager? Yeah, start with the Fat Boy Hager. Fat Boy Hager on. Give it a few flicks. Fat Boy Hager does the job. Fucking marvellous. Let's do the Verso. Verso on. Sorry about the alarm noise. Might stop in a minute. Unless I set fire to things again. Oh, Jesus. Verso operates. Yes. Fuse box. Fuse box active. Fuse box operates. Marvellous. Hager, new boy. I should probably be wearing safety goggles or something for this. Come on, Hager. Don't burn down my arc chamber. No eye protection or anything, you know. Fucking hell, that's bright. Well, that's not going to stop the smoke alarm, is it? I don't know what else to tell you, to be honest. And again, these aren't the proper lab conditions or whatever, but everything else works, including the older Hager model. It's just this new one does not want to fucking know. I mean, what do I have to fucking do for it? It's mad, isn't it? It's mad. Oh, I think I've really banjaxed my arc chamber there. Shit. The plastic's all melting. I mean, yeah, okay, that's not good. Oh, that's proper melting. Oh, shit. It's melted the fucking... It's melted the plastic that holds that top probe in. Well, that's that. I'm going to get out of here because this noise is driving me up the fucking wall. Christ, it just doesn't look good, does it? How can the supposedly game-changing, market-leading model be so stubborn to react when even their older, dumber model behaves as expected? And for all the trace boxes issued since last summer to goodness knows how many contractors like Ricky, why are there no firmware revisions for me to apply here today? I've checked the 3 models of wank AFDD I have, and none report an available update at the time of recording. Yet for all this, Hager have been winning industry awards with their unique wank technique. Here's an old one. Hager AFDD range with Pro Tools. Top Product Award 2022 is the headline. Professional electrician and installer ejaculated into our agog faces over a year ago, along with an opening byline that reads, rather predictably, Hager have, this year, changed the game with the launch of its new AFDD. Pull your tongue from out of Hager's brown hole, PE, although I guess you can kind of forgive this one, as back then all this was wholly new, nobody had got their hands on it, we weren't yet fatigued by all the game-changing statements, and nobody had sat down with a cup of tea and a Kit Kat to really think about the shonky practical implications for the installers. Although the magazine is called Professional Electrician and Installer, so maybe someone there could have raised a quizzical monobrow. Here's a more recent one from Electrical Times magazine in late 2023.
I'm pleased to announce that the winner is Hager's AFDD with Pro Tools.
Hey, thank you. Really pleased to receive this. I think, you know, it's a testament to the team in our development teams, and a testament to the teams in our marketing teams to be able to take that message to the market and our sales guys to get behind it. So we took as usually with Hager, we take a while to get the product right, but we've got the product right this time, and we're very, very happy. So really pleased to receive the award, and it's the ones that we received from Electrical Times, so I'm really happy with that.
Oh, this is painful. Somebody please switch on the auto cue and point it at Hager's website so we can get this nose over with.
AFDD with Pro Tools is an advanced diagnostics software offering superior safety protection levels, minimum disruption for homeowners, and the ability to form software updates via Bluetooth. This game-changing product provides installers with a fit and forget reassurance, eliminating the need for replacement of the device in the future. A feature which also supports our efforts in reducing waste and enhancing sustainability.
Let me just pause on that cum face as I slap my bollocks across it. Wow, I don't like the idea of AI taking jobs, but right here's a presenting role where it might have paid off. Here's the trouble with awards from industry press. I have it from an insider that they tend to be doled out to those who've spent a good few quid on advertising. If, at the end of the year, Publication X says your product has won an award, maybe you'll increase your advertising spend with Publication X again next year. I'm not suggesting that's what's happened here, but I hear it does happen. And with Electrical Times going so far as to parrot Hager's own marketing gibberish in such a word-perfect way, one wonders how they concluded this wank was what deserved their deep throat. It's also often the case that companies nominate themselves to be shortlisted for accolades, rather than there being a panel of experts independently deciding what they personally figure to be truly worthy. Savvy marketing departments who know how to game the system and grease the right poles can ensure their wares appear in the running, be they deserving or not. I have myself authored some unpaid product reviews for Electrical Times back in 2017, but I don't think I've ever seen a physical copy of their magazine, so goodness knows what the circulation is like and who sits down on the toilet to jack off over the fucking thing. At least PE can be found for free in any wholesaler, which makes them an easy wank, especially when it contains Skolmore again recycling old images of Nick Bundy from before he was famous, pretending he likes Alucian products. More disappointingly, there's also this 2023 award from Electrical Contracting News. ECN Awards winners announced. Oh look, tool testing product of the year is the TIS 570. Now that is a fucking good clamp meter, to be fair. I used that in my test rig video January last year. But look further up, and lurking under circuit protection, product of the year is Hager's Wank AFDD with Pro Tools. This time it does appear to be an independent panel of known names who have picked the winners, and I have a great respect for these guys, some of whom I've met and some I've even had a lager or two with. I consider them industry-leading lights, so it's fucking disappointing to see them associated with this product hoovering up such an accolade. Maybe they genuinely believe that this is an innovative product fully deserving of this award, but they have to picture themselves being in a position, like mine, where me, or a team under me, have to install and support Hager's junk, and you know, it's not backwards compatible. Hager aren't providing timely updates to stop erroneous tripping. I don't know if it really works. Hager haven't got a changelog and I might not be able to update them over a bad mobile signal. And if it goes to cock, I need to throw some time into pissing about with a trace box. And who's liable for returning to apply updates? And who covers the costs? What are the implications if an incident occurs on a device I install but fail to keep updated? If I perform a minor works on a circuit protected by one of these things, am I responsible for updating it? Who's liable if an update goes wrong and the shitting thing gets bricked? How do we know Hager aren't going to obsolete it in 2 years' time because they've come up with Smart AFDD version 2.0 that's only compatible with all new Pro Tools Plus, their monthly ArcFault subscription service you have to pony up for if you want any chance of getting trace data analysed? There are too many questions surrounding the product, and I kind of wonder if the big knobs who voted for it still stand by their decision, which may have been made long before assholes like me started throwing up practical concerns. I mean, it's not only me who has these concerns, right? Many of you watching will surely share some or all of them. It seems unlikely that they're all instantly dismissible like I'm some kind of lone simpleton, otherwise Hager would have effortlessly dismissed them all by now. Electricians Podcast also awarded Hager's wank a Product of the Year, but not in a way Hager's marketing will be shouting much about.
Actually, nothing was shitter this year than the Hager AFDDs. Congratulations, Hager AFDDs! They were absolutely terrible. The fact that old Savo really tried hard to actually get them to trip and couldn't get them to trip under any circumstances just means it's like the biggest flop of the year.
3 videos deep he was on AFDDs, and it weren't until I sat down and I watched them all. I sat down and went, it's just the one thing he says at the start. Why would you fit them? Because all the problem is yours. As an electrician, it's all your problem to upgrade them, to fix them. If someone does a recall, which some manufacturers have done for various products, they'll get that back and pay for it or whatever, yeah? You're in a state, if you fit them, that you go and upgrade it. You go and mess around, individually upgrade them. And that has got to be, if anyone ever has to do that, I'm sure they'll be knocking on our door and tell us, all right, we're on this one. And they are the worst product of the year.
Maybe of all time.
Are we calling that Hager AFDD an honorary David Savory win?
No, he can't win.
No, you can't win, no. But the Hager AFDDs, and we're waiting. I'm sure Dave's waiting, and we're waiting for him to for us to put out these all need upgrading. Please go and do it.
It's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. One of the influencers is going to put out a product, put out an episode where they're upgrading AFDDs from Hager because they're absolutely pony.
So there we have it, Hager's wank AFDD. And you'll notice there was no nonce on the screen this time. That's because that's the proper wank, you understand, not the alternative spelling created exclusively for this video. It is my opinion that this thing is wank. So is Hager's Pro Tools software, and so is their marketing. Improvements can be made, but Hager have so far seemingly ignored any attempts to respond to feedback. Like Ricky from my interview earlier, I've rather ridiculously had to publish specific terms and conditions regarding my exposure to this product, now detailed live on my website, link in description. It's a nonsense that there's even a protective device now on the market which forces me into this position of creating T's and C's to limit my liability should I come across it. I suggest other installers and maintainers out there think about doing the same, because you may find yourself in front of this hardware even if you don't procure and install it. Copy, paste and edit these terms from my website if you want, or come up with your own entirely, but do think about it, because this is the start of smart tech going into consumer units, and any of us can be left terribly exposed and liable for all sorts of issues. As a last word, I'm not saying Hager's product doesn't work, nor am I saying it's unfit for purpose. Indeed, I'm sure it does comply with the testing regimen of IEC 62606, otherwise it wouldn't be on the market. But I am saying I wouldn't buy or install the fucking thing. Hager are doing nothing to address the doubts or to aid me as the installer. They've erected this whole big wall of fuck you, so I'm going to give them neither an easy ride nor any of my money. Just a few coffee shout outs to read out, you'll be pleased to hear. I know it's been a very long video already. You may even be skipping this bit unless you're expecting your name to be mentioned, in which case, you know, if you are skipping it, well, you're not going to see any of it. Starting off anyway with Test Gear Junkie, the whores that are Test Gear Junkie. More videos with the lovely Linda would be nice. Jeepers creepers, be careful what you wish for. Yes, I'm sure Linda will be putting in more appearances in the future. We also have a whore, that is Ollie. Chin chin, still loving your work, says Ollie. Well, thank you very much. Obviously you don't work for Hager, because I'm sure they're not loving anything at the moment to do with this channel. And finally for this shout out, we have a promotion to whore in the name of Damien. Well done on your promotion, Damien. Whatever happened to that crazy woman? Excuse me. Yes, that'll be my lady from, what was getting up to nearly a year ago. It was last Easter. What updates can I give you there? Oh, I didn't hear from her again. There's a couple of things I regret about that video. I regret calling her a Karen. She wasn't a Karen, she had mental problems. It all seemed to make sense at the time, calling her a Karen and stuff, and it was only later I thought, no, that's not right. So I'm kind of ashamed about the title of that video, but it's out in the wild, so what can you do? I do have some information. I heard from one of her neighbours. She is a sort of known person in the area, has caused some botheration to her neighbours. Apparently the month before we were there, back on Valentine's Day last year, she assaulted one of her neighbours. And she did it outside of Leamington Police Station as well. So, you know, if you're going to assault someone, it's probably not best to do it in front of the cop shop. And I heard that she was being done for assault, and she didn't turn up to court and was subsequently picked up by the police. I also heard that she does have mental issues. She was off her meds, and that wasn't her house. It was her late mother's house. It had been standing empty for some time. The pipes burst because she turned the heating off last winter. It was because it was very cold last winter, so it wasn't an insurance job. Don't know why she kept telling me it was an insurance job, but yeah, it wasn't her. It wasn't her home. It was basically an empty property. So it which just makes the whole story more bizarre. The fact that she went so volcanic on us about the lights not being on in a property she wasn't even living in. She wasn't residing in there or anything like that, as it turned out. So I don't know. There's all sorts of background to that, and I've not heard any more. I don't know how the court case went with her neighbour. I don't know where she is today. I don't know what the situation with the house is. So there you go. That's the update. Excuse me. That's as much as I know, as much as I can tell you. So only those three names. No super wanks to read out on this one. One special mention, perhaps. Sorry, I got this stupid cough. Daniel Butler, Risley Electrical Services, who sent me an item of electrical intrigue. You will probably be seeing that in a future video, Daniel. I've got something else I'm going to pair that up with, so watch this space. Thanks very much for tuning in. Sorry it was such a long one, and well, something more interesting next time. Again, not to do with AFDDs. Some nice fault finding video, I think, next. Yes, let's do that. Good night.